Who Gets to Decide? A liberty-based podcast that brings a little piece of sanity to a confused society drowning in a culture of craziness. And here is your host, Seth Martin.
Well, all right. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Who Gets to Decide. This is episode 621. I'm Seth Martin, your host. Thank you for joining me this evening. Glad you're here and always happy you're listening. You know, if you've been following politics, and I know we don't normally talk about politics on this show, not so much really, but it's almost getting to the point where this little feud that's happening inside the Republican Party is just, it's to the point now where it's just noticeable. Like, even if you're not paying attention, it's noticeable. People on Fox News, people like Mark Levin, are talking about it, are outraged about it. Ben Shapiro on the Daily Wire. These are major voices in the Republican media apparatus, both the old media apparatus and also the new. And it's just a bizarre thing. And it seems to all be related to this favoritism, mostly in the establishment around Israel. Now, Israel, like it or not, is kind of this third rail discussion, right? It's a third rail. I mean, if you say anything negative about Israel, you hate Jews or you're anti-Semitic, and there's all this kind of discussion, this kind of talk. And this is in my mind, this is just a way to shut down debate. It's a way to stop conversation. It's like when Republicans would talk about race and economics or something, and people would come on TV and go, racist, that's racist. And I don't know if you noticed, but during the Biden administration, so many things were labeled as racist that racist became meaningless, essentially. I mean, that's what it seemed like to me. And now you're starting to see that with this Israel involvement. Now, what is the Israel involvement? Most of you probably already know about this, but the allegations are, and they don't seem to be unfounded, is that we're not a country of, for, and by the people. Like we learned in 8th grade history. We're more akin to these political donors, people like Bill Ackman, the Adelsons, people that have just money to burn, really, okay? And they have this affinity for Israel, for the Jewish project, the Zionist project, and they donate to politicians and they control whether you like it or not. I mean, some of you listening may be for this and some of you may not be for this. But wherever you come down on this, it's not what we all kind of understand is the purpose of America, right? This is not how we have come to understand the way the political process in America works. And so it's just interesting that this is now approaching this fevered pitch and getting a little bit ridiculous, honestly. The complaints are just over the top. In many cases, they're straight up lies. And I just kind of wanted to wade into this a little bit and kind of put my 2 cents on it. Now, look, everybody's weighed in on this, and, what I have to say really doesn't matter. I'm not on either side of these types of things. I don't think anybody should be using the government for any reason, okay? I don't think you should be going to the government if you have power in manipulating the government. That said, that's how a lot of things are done, right? And that's part of my complaint on this show is that if you're connected, you can go to the government and get all kinds of things, advantages and whatnot. It's just so happened this particular spat is over the country's foreign policy and how that's going to be administered or executed. And, this all kind of has come to a head around really Donald Trump's, I don't think he coined the phrase originally. I don't know who did, but America First is, was kind of what Donald Trump ran on, right? And so now the question is all about, well, what is America First? What does that mean? Now, you would think it would be pretty obvious what America First means. America First means, well, you should consider the citizens of America. You should consider America's interest. You should consider anything that has to do with the prosperity in America, the standard of living in America, the well-being of Americans. That should be considered over and above what the other considerations on any matter. So if you're talking about engaging in some conflict with some other country, you might say, well, I don't see how, sending off a bunch of Americans into battle to get killed into the meat grinder serves America First, for example. Or you could say, I don't see how sending billions and billions of dollars to other countries to buy influence over their foreign policy serves America. I don't see how having people that have an affinity for the Zionist project in Israel influencing American politicians at the expense of Native Americans, Americans that grew up here in America, Americans that have lived here their whole life, or not immigrants, and things like that. So there's at the root of this little spat is just, what is America First? And so I wanted to play some clips. I have a lot of clips, and I'm probably going to skip around a little bit because, I just don't want the show to be nothing but clips. I want to be able to comment on some of this stuff and talk to you about what I see here and why it's a problem, or why it's not good for individuals. If you're just an average, person out there, Joe or Jane, Jack or Jane, Jack or Jill, I guess is the right combination. Why is this bad for you? That's really what I want to talk about. And, this is central, and I know you guys are probably thinking, okay, where's the money pitch coming in? Well, it's coming in right here. None of this would be possible but for fiat money. Whatever money people like Bill Ackman have, or Miriam Adelson, or any other big donors in the AIPAC sphere, the Jewish lobby sphere. And this is not, I feel like I have to say this is not about anti-Semitism, okay? This is about a group of people being privileged at the expense of the rest of us. That's all this is about, okay? It's not about people hate the Jews, or the Jews own everything, or whatever. It's not about that. It's about, is it legitimate in America, with our understanding of American society, is it legitimate for any group? I don't care if they're African Americans, or they're Asians, or they're Jews, or they're Hispanic, Mexicans, or Venezuelans, or Hondurans. It doesn't matter to me. The question is it legitimate to organize in such a way that you advantage your group at the expense of the millions of individuals that live in America? And the answer to that question is absolutely not. It's not acceptable. And it doesn't matter, even if your group is a corporation, your group is GE, okay, and you decide to lobby the government to outlaw the incandescent light bulb so you can sell those little curly Q light bulbs. Outlaw the light bulb that you have to sell for 45 cents a piece, and make it so that everybody has to buy the little curly Q light bulbs and pay $4.50 a piece. That's just as bad, okay? So it doesn't matter what you're going to the government for, whatever privilege you're seeking, whether it's some foreign policy privilege or some market privilege or whatever. This is the central problem, okay? And this Zionist project and the Christian Zionist movement that supports it and really is pushing it, in America at least, is just another group going to the government and getting some special privilege, some special access, whatever, okay? This is my view, okay? My view is not about the group itself, whether it be black people or Jewish people or Asian people or Mexican people, or what, it doesn't matter. The group is not the important part. Or if it's Palantir, or if it's GE, or if it's Amazon, or if it's Tesla. To me, none of that matters. If you're going to, if you're going to the government to get some special privilege, either to be advantaged in the marketplace, or advantaged in foreign policy, or advantaged in some way, notice that there's not individuals doing this. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to the government to carve out some privilege for Seth Martin. No, it's actually not possible, because the individual alone doesn't have a lot of resources. So the politicians are like, talk to the hand. They don't want to talk to you because you don't have enough. It's only corporations that could take 0.00001% of their revenue and sprinkle it around to politicians. If I took 0.0001% of my income, that would amount to about that much. And so nobody's interested in that. But if I'm Bill Ackman and I've got $9 billion and I take 0.00001 of my $9 billion and spread it around to some politicians so they can favor my Zionist project that I'm very passionate about, then that's a problem. Okay. It's really that simple. So I've got some clips. So we're going to get into the mud a little bit today. Okay. We got some. So the question is who's really on the right side of this discussion? Now, what you'll notice about this today is nobody's really talking about this in the same way I am. So I'm not going to play clips of people that have the same thinking that I have. I'm going to play clips of kind of two different sides of this spat. And I'm just going to ask you, which one sounds more reasonable? You know, which one sounds like it's out of control lunacy, and which one sounds kind of normal? And so I think that's a good exercise, because what's happening is there's a lot of name calling, there's a lot of misquoting, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what somebody said or didn't say. Excuse me, I'll take a drink here for a second. And this is creating a lot of confusion, and only people that are really into this kind of stuff are really parsing these conversations, I think, following this in a way that can make any sense out of it. Most people are just not watching this very carefully. So anyway, with that little introduction, I've got some Ben Shapiro clips when he was at Megyn Kelly's event. I've got a Mark Levin clip, which we're going to play, but I'm either going to skip around in it or I'm going to not play the whole thing because it's just so annoying. Mark Levin has become so annoying. And I used to follow Mark Levin. I used to listen to his radio show. I've read a number of his books. Men in Black is a great book. It's about the Supreme Court. If you haven't read Men in Black, go get Mark Levin's book, Men in Black, or go to the half-price bookstore and buy it. Don't pay full price, because that'll benefit Mark Levin. And I just, right now at this stage where Mark Levin is, I don't want anybody really benefiting that guy, because he is so off the reservation. It's unbelievable, really. And I look back on it and I think, I can't even believe I used to listen to this guy. He's gotten to be so obnoxious and so just rabid about this Zionist project in Israel, and how it's somehow, he correlates it to America's success and all this kind of stuff. And it's just not true, at least not as far as I can tell. So let's open up this Ben Shapiro clip and start there. The first thing he's going to do is he's going to talk about Tucker, how he reached out to Tucker. Let's get together and do a show, and let's talk about democratic socialism and how that's bad for America and all this other stuff. And, Tucker, what's driving that for Ben Shapiro is this guy, Zoran Mamdani, that we talked about the other day. And, Tucker's got a national show. He's not a New Yorker. He doesn't live in New York. He does, so there's a lot of reasons why he's not talking about Mamdani. But Ben's upset about that. And he's especially upset after he, quote unquote, platformed Nick Fuentes. And I'm going to say a little bit about that. What does that mean to platform somebody? All right, let's jump into this clip here.
Here's what the actual text exchange went like after the call. So I texted him and I said, "Thanks so much for calling. It means the world. It truly does. Should we do a show together talking about the DSA threat, Democratic Socialists of America threat, and orienting in the same direction? Happy to do whatever it takes to bring everyone back together for the fight that matters." And Tucker then wrote back, "Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm going to spend the next week or two thinking about how to be most effective. The country is clearly on the brink." I reached out repeatedly after that. Nothing happened. And again, I thought it was a good idea at the time. I think I felt differently after I saw what he did with Nick Fuentes, and after he proceeded, in my opinion, to spend the subsequent weeks doing literally nothing to fight the left. I say this with sadness because Tucker used...
Okay, so this whole fight the left thing, part of what's happening here is kind of what I've talked about before, is like if the country is not really of, for, and by the people, and I'm holding up air finger quotes, if that's not really what we have, then is the enemy really the left? You see there? See what I'm doing there? Ben Shapiro's focused on the left. He sees democratic socialism as the enemy. And I do too, by the way. Okay? Just to be clear. But what Tucker is trying to get at, and what I've been trying to get at, is it's not a left-right problem. Yes, we have a left-right problem, but that problem is smaller. That problem is lesser than this other problem. Like, we have a structural problem that voting doesn't actually matter. Well, why doesn't voting matter, Seth? Well, because the way the system is organized, by the time you get to vote, they've already picked both candidates. They've already picked somebody on the left and somebody on the right that's acceptable, and I'm holding up air fingers quotes again, to the establishment, the people that actually run the country. And this is not a conspiracy theory. It's just the way it is, okay? And the problem is Ben Shapiro and his group, they want to continue to play this left-right game because it's profitable for them. If I can get my side angry at their side and their side gets angry at my side, we can all just make money, okay, in this media game. But what Tucker's doing is he's saying, hey, there's a bigger thing going on here, and I'm interested in getting it. This is why he didn't respond to Ben Shapiro. And Ben Shapiro doesn't get it, okay? Ben Shapiro doesn't get it because he doesn't want to get it, okay? He wants to go back to business as usual and bitch and moan about the left and have the left squawk and squeal, okay? And everybody can agree with him because, I mean, any sane person is going to agree with Ben Shapiro when he's bad-mouthing the left, okay? Because the left is insane. So he wants to get back to that game. That's where his Daily Wire makes a lot of money. But the problem is that this is not the existential threat that America is facing, okay? It's not the left-right threat. That's not the problem. And you know that because we've talked about it here on this program. We've talked about what the real threat is. And the real threat is there's a cabal of people, behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz, running things. And it doesn't matter if you go vote. It doesn't matter what you say. They're going to do whatever the hell they want to do and is in their interest. And this is what Tucker's getting at. And this is why it's so frustrating for people like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin. But I just want to expose that a little bit because it's, I think some people, not everybody, certainly not people listening to this program, but some people could be confused about what they're seeing here, what they're witnessing. All right, let me jump into this next clip of Ben Shapiro.
This is why, I think you and I differ on our angle with regard to, for example, Candace Owens. I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she is doing right now. Okay, and I say that again.
But what?
Because
like I didn't opine on whether it's evil or not, but my position is it's really none of my business. And
why is it? But I have a question. Why is it none of your business? I mean, you comment on these things for a living.
I'm not mother of the internet.
No, but if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erica of?
Yes.
Of murdering her own husband?
She's accusing TPUSA insiders and other members of the right wing, including Seth Dillon, of being involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, yes.
Okay. Like I said, I don't take in that content, which is an honest statement. I don't have time to watch Candace's show.
I believe you. But the point that I'm making is that when
what I understand Candace
should
to
not,
have
in
been
our
doing.
business.
Okay, first of all, that is not true. That's what he just said is absolutely not true. He totally mischaracterized what Candace Owens has been saying. I know because I've been listening to the show. And the reason I'm listening to the show is I too believe something is not right. Okay? From the moment they showed that video of the guy running across the roof, I was like, okay, where's the gun? And, especially after we found out that the gun was in the woods, I don't know, a mile away or something. Okay, well, if I shoot a gun, if I'm on a roof and I shoot a gun at somebody, and then I'm seen running across the roof and jumping off the roof, okay, and I don't have a gun, then how did the gun get from the roof to the woods? So see, that right there was enough for me to go, yeah, this doesn't pass the smell test. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't think nobody really knows what happened except the people that, the person that pulled the trigger and maybe the other people that were involved. Maybe Tyler Robinson was involved and he actually knows. But is that even Tyler Robinson running across the roof? They only have this grainy, footage. It just doesn't pass the smell test to me. Now, that doesn't mean I know what happened, and nor does Candace Owens. But Candace Owens is digging into it, right? Charlie Kirk was her friend. They spent, I think, from like 2016 to 2024. So what is that, 8 years, going to college campuses and talking to students and spending nights having dinner together and getting to know each other and being friends. Okay? And she's pissed, which I understand. I would be too. If my best friend got killed and the whole damn thing stunk to high heaven, I'd be upset about it. And she's upset about it. And so she's pursuing different leads. She's got a huge platform, Candace Owens. And so she's got a tips line. She's like, hey, if you know anything about this or that, please send that to tips@candace.com and all this kind of stuff. So she is digging into this, and it's making a lot of people uncomfortable. And the reason it's making people uncomfortable is because she's catching people in lies. And they're really kind of stupid lies. Like, why would you even lie about that? But what is another lie is just what Ben Shapiro just told there. Candace Owens has hardly said anything about Erica Kirk. She's talking about TPUSA and how some people look kind of suspicious. If you go watch the video, there's a Mikey McCoy. This is Rob McCoy's son, who's like chief of staff or something at TPUSA. He's standing to Charlie's left, just beyond the tent. As soon as Charlie is shot, he walks away. And when you see him on the other side of the tent, he's already got a cell phone up to his ear, and he's walking away talking to somebody. He didn't go to Charlie and say, oh my God, Charlie, are you okay? He just walked away. And then they have another scene. They have another video of him walking to the parking lot. He never looks back. He just keeps walking. Now, isn't that weird? Like, Candace Owens is bringing up questions like, that seems weird to me. Seems weird to her, which is why she's asking questions. Who was Mikey McCoy talking to? Why did he get on the phone so quickly right after Charlie was shot? How come he didn't administer aid to Charlie? How come he didn't go, oh my God, Charlie, are you okay? Or, it just was weird behavior. And she's bringing up things like that. So, look, it's making people like Ben Shapiro uncomfortable, mainly because Ben Shapiro, Josh Hammer, all these people came out right after Charlie Kirk died, and they said, oh, he was one of the best. He was the best friend to Israel, the absolute best friend to Israel. And he was very much behind the Zionist project, and he supported us. And we had a Zoom meeting with him the day before, and he told me that, man, I need to read your book, Josh, because, it's just all inside baseball. But none of this stuff actually adds up, because it is, what was it called? It's some sort of student event that TPUSA had in July. And you know what I'm talking about because we did a show on it a while back. And this is the one where Tucker Carlson stood up and gave that speech and said, Epstein, he talked about Epstein, he talked about Bill Ackman, he talked about there's something going on here. And Charlie Kirk was starting to shift his opinion around what Israel was doing, especially the way they were prosecuting this conflict in Gaza. It was really causing a lot of problems for him. Donors were not happy that they had Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith and these people at the TPUSA event, but then they were just hounding Charlie a lot. And people like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and all these people that are 100% for this Zionist project were out telling people, no, that's not true. Charlie Kirk was on board. He was Israel's best friend and all this kind of stuff. And turns out none of that's true. Candace reported on all this stuff. Everybody called her a liar. And like a week later, she produces all the text messages that shows what she said was accurate. So these people have lost their minds over this. And they're just telling more lies. They're trying to implicate Megyn Kelly because Megyn Kelly has a lot of Zionist friends that are friendly to the Zionist project. And look, these people have huge programs. Okay. They influence millions and millions and millions of people. And so people like Ben Shapiro are just frustrated that we can't all get on the same line with, what's the party line? What can let's all get coordinated about what we're going to say about this. And honest people like Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly and Dave Smith and not Tim Pool, there's a bunch of people, but they're not falling for this, right? They're honest people. The same people that were honest during COVID are being honest about this. And these other people that told you to go get the shot and it's safe and effective like Ben Shapiro did, they're all lying to you again. And so they're just trying to run the same racket that they did during COVID. It's just now it's a little bit closer to home because it deals with this Zionist project. All right, let's jump back into this clip.
I think it's important. Listen, friendship should not trump.
We don't even know each other.
I understand, but even with Tucker, friendship should not trump our manifest requirement to speak out when people do and say things that are both detrimental to conservatism and morally wrong.
Okay, so I don't totally disagree, but I think the way of handling that, at least for me, is much different. So I saw things go south between you and Tucker, at least from my vantage point, when you disagreed on Israel. That was obvious. And he was, let me just make my point.
Sure.
And so he was saying things that were critical of Israel and our policy towards Israel. And then you did one show where you did what I thought you should have done if you disagreed with him, which clearly you did, which is say what you believe and what you think is factual and educate your audience on what you think are the real facts and give them the evidence for it. But you named him and it felt like an attack. And that to me was the beginning of the end.
Okay. I'm not going to play any more of that. But bottom line is you got people lying about what people are saying. And this is making some people very uncomfortable. Megyn Kelly is very uncomfortable, okay? Because Megyn Kelly, she is kind of a pro-Zionist person, Now, any of these honest people, like Megyn Kelly included, are looking at this whole thing in Gaza and they're thinking, oh my God, I'm on the wrong side of this. And they're kind of doing an about face. And this is making people like Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro and all the people, Josh Hammer, all these people, Laura Loomer, all these people, a lot of these people are being paid, okay, by these rich donors to kind of pump up Israel and the Zionist project. Now, look, my criticism is not about Jews, okay, just to be clear. My criticism is about government. What you have to remember is Israel is a government, just like the United States is a government. I mean, how often am I on here criticizing the United States government? Every time, basically, nonstop. I mean, I criticize the U.S. government. That's all this show is about, is criticizing the U.S. government and how they're interfering with our God-given right to be free in America. Okay, that's the whole show. And so, what? I can't criticize another government called Israel? Or I can't criticize, that's like saying I can't criticize Australia, or I can't criticize England or the United Kingdom or something. I mean, we can criticize any government we want, especially criticize governments. Governments are horrible, and they do horrible things to people. And it's dangerous for individuals to let government get as powerful as the U.S. government and the Israeli government. It's dangerous for I mean, look at the Gazans. It's certainly dangerous for them, but it's dangerous for, it's dangerous for Charlie Kirk. Now, I don't know. Again, I don't know who killed Charlie Kirk, but do I think it was some confused trans guy with a beef? No, I don't believe that at all. I think that's ridiculous. And if you just look into it a little bit, I think you'll arrive at the same conclusion. Now, look at this trial. They're going to have this trial in secret. Why? Why are they going to have this trial in secret? Because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that there's actually no evidence. They don't want you to know any of those things. They want you to believe that somehow he took this 30-06 rifle, an old rifle, by the way, which is not designed to break down quickly. And they want you to believe that he used a screwdriver and took it all apart and stuck it in his backpack. And that's why you don't see the gun. Look, there's people online that that got that exact gun, took it apart as much as you can take it apart, and it still sticks out of a backpack by, I can't get my fingers on here, by like 12 inches. I mean, you just cannot fit that gun in a backpack. It doesn't matter how much you take it apart because the barrel is too long. It just doesn't add up. And, some people have an interest in just moving on, and some people have an interest in digging into it. And that's kind of what you see here. All right, we're going to switch to Mark Levin. This is really something. I'm definitely not going to play the whole video here because it's just so annoying.
What do you mean we don't cancel people? We canceled David Duke. Donald Trump canceled David Duke. We canceled Pat Buchanan. We canceled the John Birch Society. We canceled Joseph Sobran. We canceled pornography on TV. We cancel stuff all the damn time. Hitler admirers, Stalin admirers, Jew haters, American haters, Churchill haters. You're damn right we're going to cancel them and deplatform them.
Okay, this is interesting here because Mark Levin, and again, I used to listen to Mark Levin. I used to be, like a lot of people, after 9/11, I became rabid. Like my whole thing was like, you can't have that in America. You can't have people commandeer planes and run them into buildings, and that's just not, that doesn't work in an open society. That was kind of my opinion about 9/11. And so, but I trusted the government. Okay. The government says it was people in Afghanistan and this guy, Osama bin Laden, and he planned. Okay, great. We got the CIA and the FBI and all these different intelligence agencies. Sure. If that's what you say happened, then I trust you. I believe you. The problem is it didn't hold up. When you look at a big lie like that, and then you just start to pay attention, you start to see that there's a lot of lies. Okay. And what Mark Levin is kind of talking about is back when it was Fox News or ABC, NBC, CBS, you had to do, what the people that owned those companies, you had to report what they decided what was in the news. They decided how you were going to say about what you were going to say about it, how you were going to talk about it, which questions you could ask, which questions you couldn't ask. Okay. They decided all of those things. And this apparatus was used to control the narrative. That's the way we got to where we are today. Okay. And people like Mark Levin were a product of that. Okay. Now you might say, yeah, but he's a conservative and he was promoting conservative values and da-da-da-da-da-da. Just go back and look at some COVID clips of Mark Levin. Go back and watch some Fox News clips of all the talking heads on Fox News. None of them, not one, told you the truth. Not one. And so what's happened is people have started to become aware of the fact that, oh, I see. These guys aren't actually in the business of giving me the news. they're in the business of crafting the news to get a certain outcome. Okay? And once people started to realize this, they started to look for alternative sources. Okay? And this is like Tucker Carlson. People used to watch his show, like 3 million people a night or whatever, and he gets fired and his show goes to like 70 million or something a day. So what's happening is what the industry has weeded out all these people that are telling the truth. Some of them have been able to turn that into big shows, and people that want to know the truth are seeking that information from those people. They're not going to Mark Levin, okay? They're not going to Fox News. And people are asking very uncomfortable questions. So the narrative that Mark Levin is trying to pitch or to peddle is that October 7th was horrible, which it was, and Israel has a right to exist, and therefore if they have to destroy 1 million people in order to assert that right to exist, then that is their right to exist. You know, that's what that's all about. These people are animals. They're horrible. They don't care about human life. I don't even know how they have family. You know, whatever the narrative is, it's designed to manipulate you, to make you hate some group of people so that you're not paying attention to what's going on over here. That's really what this is all about. And people that believe in liberty, people that believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, look at these people over in Gaza and go, okay, yeah, culturally, we're not aligned with them. Maybe they would kill us if they had an opportunity, but that doesn't mean they should die. Okay. That doesn't mean they don't get to have their life. Every person on the planet, every person was created by God. Okay. And has a right to life. Okay. Nobody has the right to take someone else's life, especially if the force is not initiated. Like if somebody initiates force against me and I feel threatened, like I could die, then okay, it's okay for me to engage in taking life. But certainly at some point, I think people like Megyn Kelly and some of these other people, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, I think some of these people are looking at this and going, okay, you've neutralized the threat so that October 7th can't happen. Why the need to just turn the whole thing into a parking lot? Clearly they've gone too far, and they want to go further. That's the other thing. So what is really going on here, and why does America have to be a part of it? That's maybe the bigger question. Israel, the state of Israel, wants to wage war on brown people that surround them, then that should be their deal. You know, we don't have to be a part of that. We need to be a better example. And the problem is, this is anti-Semitism. That's what that's called. What I just described to you is being labeled as anti-Semitism. And it's like, no, that's not. How could that be? I'm sitting here talking about every person has a right to life and liberty. Every person includes Jewish people, okay, whether they're here or they're in Israel or somewhere else for that matter. Every person means every person, okay? So that can't be anti-Semitic. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. But that's where these people are. That's what they're arguing. And of course, it's idiotic and stupid, but they think this is a winning argument somehow. So let's listen to some more of it.
Called the market system. They don't have a lifetime job like a bureaucrat who we're going to protect. And if they're your friend, there's something wrong with you. No Hitler admirer, Holocaust denier, platformer should be anybody's friend, as a matter of fact.
Who's he talking about?
You don't get to wrap your psychotic, mental, unhinged, Nazi, Klan, jihadist bullshit around American patriotism.
Again, I don't know who he's talking about. I listen to all these people.
You don't get to claim you're MAGA and America first when you're lining up with the Marxists and the Islamists and Hamas and the terrorists. That's not America first. That's sick. Now, I don't need more than 15 minutes. The cowards. We're surrounded by cowards who have microphones, who have TV cameras, who have websites, who have columns. Cowards. It's spelled C-A-R-L-S-O-N.
So Tucker Carlson's a coward.
F-U-E-N-T-E-S.
Nick Fuentes
it's spelled
is a coward.
O-W-E-N-S.
Candace
it's
Owens
spelled
is a coward.
B-A-N-N-O-N. It's
Steve
spelled
Bannon.
Marjorie Trader Green. You can figure that out
Marjorie
yourself.
Taylor Greene is a coward.
And they're not alone.
Look, you can go
How
listen
are
to
we
these
going
people.
to attack the Mondamis and the Talibs and the Omars and the Sanders and the rest of them?
Okay, see, there it is. He wants to go back to, let's argue about Democrats and Republicans. Because that's how they make their money. Keep you fighting your next door neighbor. Now, look, I say fight both. I mean, those are dumb ideas. And yeah, that's bad. We should fight them too. But are you telling me that what Mark Levin, see what he's doing is he's taking the MAGA flag and he's saying, we're MAGA. And it's like, what? MAGA? How can you be MAGA? I mean, if you just got to go listen to these guys, there's no way they're MAGA. Okay. They're not America first. They didn't even like the whole MAGA thing when Trump first came out with it. They were like, never Trump. These people were all never Trumpers, which is, it doesn't matter because this isn't even about Trump. It's just they're pivoting, to this hateful, he's saying that guys like me, or not me really, he's talking about Tucker Carlson or Dave Smith or people that are against what's happening in Gaza are hateful people. Does that even make sense? Because I want people to stop being killed in Gaza or in Ukraine. That makes me a hateful person because I disagree with my government. I mean, this is absurd. But this is what he's saying.
When in our own house, this poison is spreading, we've got to take care of business. We can fight the enemy on the other side. But the problem is, the more daunting problem, the more complicated problem is when they're in our house and they're trying to take over our house.
Now, I agree with that. That is a bigger problem. And that's what we talked about earlier. This is what Tucker is saying. The bigger problem is it almost doesn't matter the left-right dichotomy when you have this bigger problem that's taking over the whole house. So isn't it interesting that he sees criticism of our policy, our foreign policy, whether it be Israel or whatever, it could be Israel, it could be other countries, Ukraine, okay? So he's seeing that criticism of foreign policy involving Israel, Ukraine, stupid wars, he's saying that is the greater problem inside our house. Now, does that ring true to you? Or is it more like what Tucker says? No, we have a system where we the people supposedly get to say, and that system seems to be undermined by very rich donors that are more interested in the Zionist movement than they are individual Americans' prosperity. Or does maybe that seems more reasonable? Because from my perspective, the second one seems more reasonable. It seems more real. That's a more real concern than what Mark Levin is talking about.
And they're burning down our house. And they're destroying America First. And they're destroying MAGA. And they're destroying the Republican Party, which means they're destroying the country. Either speak up and stand out, but don't be a pretender.
If the Republican Party cannot represent individual Americans, then the Republican Party is useless. Okay? Now, I don't want the Democrats to take over either. But to me, it's more important to get to a system where we, of, for, and by the people. And to me, this capturing Congress because I've got $9 billion or $100 billion and I can sprinkle around to politicians and control them, okay? That is a much greater problem for you and me, okay? Much greater problem. There's a reason why we don't let presidents become president if they're foreign born, because they might have allegiance to some other country. And, if we're gonna give all this power to politicians, they need to have allegiance to America, okay? That's what America First is all about. Your allegiance is with me, okay? Not the state of Israel, not the United Kingdom, not Germany, not France, not Spain, not Italy, not Honduras, not Mexico, not Canada. It's to me, E pluribus unum, from many one, okay? There's one America, but there's many of us individually. And what we want as citizens is we want our interest to prevail. And so Mark Levin, he wants Israel's interest to prevail. And he also is kind of a warmonger. So he sees an opportunity to kill a bunch of people over in the Middle East, and that also makes him happy, I guess. I mean, that's what he's advocating for.
Don't be a pretender. We need help to deal with these people.
It sounds like the audience is a little lackluster there, doesn't it?
Performance
Sorry about
that
the
truly
commercial.
matters.
These aren't policy disputes.
They're not?
These aren't personality issues. We're talking about liberty versus tyranny, good versus evil, right versus wrong, democracy versus terrorism, Western Enlightenment versus 7th century barbarians.
But is that really the choice? I mean, liberty versus tyranny for sure. But maybe good versus evil even. But democracy versus terrorism? Is that the choice that Americans are being given? That's not what's going on here. So these are false choices, false dichotomies. Mark Levin rhetorically is very talented, okay? And he's very, very powerful speaker. But he's on the wrong side of this thing, man. I mean, he just is. And he has this affinity for Israel because he's Jewish. And this goes back to kind of what we talked about, I don't know, a couple episodes ago. Like if you want to come to America and be an American, then we should consider having you here, okay? I think the challenge with Jewish people in general is they're a diaspora. So they're you can't assimilate Jewish people. And believe me, if there was no Israel the state, let's just say Israel was a region and there was no Israel the state, there would be nothing to argue about here. The only reason that there's any problem here is because Israel is a state, okay? It's a government. And this government is, acting horribly to some of the people that it should be responsible for protecting. That's kind of the long short of it. But I kind of look at this and go, why should we be surprised? At some point, let's kind of draw an analogy. At some point, we're going to have more Islamists here, more Muslims in America than we can possibly assimilate. What do you think the U.S. government's going to do? You think they're just going to let America become a Muslim nation and let Muslims walk door to door and either tell people to convert or kill them on the spot? You think the United States government is going to let that happen? Because you know what happens after you kill a bunch of Americans, then they're coming for the people in Congress, okay? They're not going to let that happen. It's just like all these immigrants that came in. Once the political winds start to change and people get tired of it, the amount of force that people are going to clamor for is going to be way over the top. It's going to be kind of like what's happening with ICE. People are horrified about what they see around ICE. That's what happens when you open the border wide open to way more people than we could ever assimilate, and people start to see their lives changing in their own generation, inside of their own generation. You know, this is not taking decades to happen. This is taking 1 decade to happen. And when people see that much change in that short of a time, they start clamoring for the government to do something. This is why you have ICE running around, snatching people out of their workplace and stuff. So you don't think that can happen if the Muslim population starts to get out of hand? Absolutely, it can happen. And so this is just why we shouldn't do it. This is why we shouldn't bring in more people than we can assimilate. And assimilate just means be an American. That's all that means. That means you can't come here and say, well, you know, Sharia law is really better. And then start changing society towards Sharia law. You can't do that. Okay? That's not what it means to be an American. All right, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pivot here a little bit, and I'm going to play some clips from Tucker's interview of Nick Fuentes. Now, I don't listen to a lot of Nick Fuentes, but I did listen to this interview, and there were very, very few things that I thought were just outrageous about this interview. And so, I mean, really just 2 things that he said that were, I wouldn't say, and I don't agree with. But the vast majority of what he said was very reasonable, very reasonable. And because this guy said something when he was 18 or when he was 22, people are saying he's a Nazi or he's this or he's that. And it's just not the case. And so now I'm going to play a little bit of Nick Fuentes on Tucker Carlson's show, and tell me what you think. I'm going to ask you to comment in the show later. Tell me what you think about this guy. Tell me what you think about what he's saying. A lot of people haven't even listened to what he said. They're weighing in on something they don't even know anything about.
It was just not even, it's actually, you're going to love this. I don't know if I've ever even said this on an interview before. I was listening to Mark Levin's show. This goes to show how normie I was.
Actually?
I listen to him every day.
You listen to Mark Levin every day?
In high school, yes.
Wow.
I was a fan. I loved his show, and I actually liked how he was kind of obnoxious and mean to his callers.
Yeah.
Vicious.
I
liked that. I thought that was funny. But I'll never forget one show. He goes live, and he says, America's becoming a majority non-white country. Does anybody think that's a good idea? And I was thinking to myself, yeah, that actually doesn't sound so good. I didn't really even think that America's becoming majority minority like that.
Wait, so you were radicalized on race by Mark Levin?
Yes.
Are you making that up? That's
a real story.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. He planted the seed at least. And then I saw a graphic on 4chan or Twitter, and I'm sure you've seen something similar. It said, this is what the map looks like, the electoral map. If only men vote, if only women vote, if only whites vote, if only non-whites vote. And it became very obvious what the electoral problem is. It's demographics. These immigrants are coming here. They're going to turn Texas blue like they turned California blue.
Yeah, I saw it happen.
Yeah, and you know, you look at even the opinion polls. These people don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in the Constitution, the Second Amendment. As a libertarian, the things that are, and as American, things that are important to you, they don't believe, they don't understand these things. And so I said, that's another political obstacle. You've got the media, you've got immigration. So I'm thinking like, well, we're going to vote for Ted Cruz. He's going to be the constitutionalist. We'll vote for Rand Paul. He'll be the libertarian.
The same thing, by the way.
But what stands in the way of political power for us? It's the media and it's immigration. So I said, well, we got to get Trump to beat the media, build the wall, deport the illegals. And once we set the country straight, then we can actually have our constitutional republic back. That was kind of the...
Now, look, this is not a crazy idea. I don't think it's necessary per se. I think if you got rid of the welfare state, if you just got rid of fiat money, all this would happen anyway, because anybody that's not here that could make it in America would just leave, okay? They would just leave. You don't need ICE to dress up in masks and riot gear and stuff like that to deport people. But look, the point is, people are groping around for what is the problem. The one thing I like about Nick Fuentes is he's getting at the root cause, okay? He's getting at the root cause. And he's saying the quiet part out loud. But what he's really talking about, he's not saying we can't have immigrants. Okay, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is we're importing people that do not understand free speech. They don't understand property rights. They don't understand free markets. They don't understand the non-aggression principle. They don't understand Western civilization. Okay? And if you bring in too many of those people, we're going to have a problem. Okay? That's all he's saying. And he's not saying it, he's a better speaker than I am, but he's kind of making it about race only. He's not making the connection to assimilation and Western civilization values and things like that. I mean, I know he knows that. I mean, this is a very, very smart person, this guy, Nick Fuentes. When you listen to him talk, he is very smart. Way smarter than a lot of these people that hate him, okay? But he's very provocative, okay? He says things, he's very emotional, and he also says things that are very provocative. And he's talking to, another thing is he's talking to a very young audience in most cases. And so the younger people, unfortunately, I mean, I wish Nick Fuentes would shift his whole discussion to monetary policy and fiat money and how we need to get rid of this because it's destroying America. If we did, man, this guy, Nick Fuentes, could be the next president of the United States. I mean, he's really very talented. And maybe he could anyway. I don't know. But I think he's a little too divisive. He's kind of talking about the symptoms also. But he's breaking those symptoms down around race and things like that. But really what he's talking about, if you peel away the race part of it, he's talking about Western civilization values. And a lot of these people that we're importing from Central America, for example, they don't understand. They don't know what free speech is. They've lived generations under the local strongman. So all they know is force. And, you know, they're looking for the benevolent dictator, right? Like a Hugo Chavez or a Nicolas Maduro down in Venezuela. And so I agree a lot with what Nick Fuentes is saying. I just don't think he's speaking about it properly. Because it's not, look, a lot of these people are coming here because they want a better life. It's not their fault that they don't understand Western values. You know, many of them are uneducated probably. But it's incumbent upon us, okay, the people and our representative leaders to make rules that exclude people that just don't have the capacity to understand Western values. If you do understand Western values and you've got something to add to our society, then by all means come in. You know, we want you. All right, let's jump to the next clip.
So, I won't keep torturing you with biographical questions, but I do want to, like, so how your show gets canceled, you drop out of college, you have no money, you decide you want to work at the Leadership Institute, which is like a conservative think tank or some organization of longstanding in Arlington, Virginia. Mm-hmm. You can't get the job there because you're worried about immigration. It's all pretty amazing. And then, like, where does that leave you? How did you
it's too far right.
succeed?
Well, I continued doing my show. I did it independently.
What does that mean? How do you do it? How do you do a show independently? Like, how did you do it?
I started a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I was in my parents' basement, and I put up a green screen. I got my computer, webcam, And I just started going live every night in the same way that I did at RSBN. I just did it on my own channel where I had creative control over it. And at that point, I basically mounted an attack on the conservative establishment from the outside. I sort of realized that there's sort of two ways you could play this. You could infiltrate the conservative movement. I could recant all my views and apologize.
That's what Reagan
and
did,
pretend to be
Ronald
one
Reagan
of them
did that.
and bypass the gatekeepers, the censors. I said, or I could be in the wilderness and I would be alone and I would be radioactive, but I could challenge the credibility and legitimacy of the conservative movement and its claim to represent conservatives. And that was kind of the mission, was to say, no, the immovable standard is America first. I'm going to represent it. And the conservative movement is going to have to move to me. I will not move towards them. And
So I don't know if y'all remember, but one time we were talking about liberty and freedom. And I said, it's a popular idea. You don't have to convince people to want to be free. They just somehow know. Like, you're just born, and then, I don't know, 20 years later, you just know that you want to be free. I mean, even people in countries where there is no freedom, they know they want to be free. They don't even know why, but they know they want to be free. And so America First is the same thing. If there's somebody out there talking about America First ideas, that's like there's people's ears are buzzing to that, right? They're going, yeah. Why are we so concerned about these other damn countries? I'm struggling here. I can't afford a house. I can't afford my life. I gotta live in a place with 3 other roommates. How am I ever going to get married? I mean, these are the questions on people's minds. So why, it's not outrageous. What Nick Fuentes is saying is not outrageous. Okay. It's very reasonable. People, especially with young people that aren't listening to Fox News, they don't even have cable. They can't afford it. Okay? They're watching YouTube. They're watching TikTok. Okay? They're not watching Mark Levin, shut up, you damn fool. They're not listening to that. Okay? They're listening to Nick Fuentes in his basement, sitting in front of a green screen, talking about America First. And in pointing to what he perceives as the foundational problem. The reason your life is hard, Mr. and Mrs. Listener, is because your politicians are not focused on America. Now, does that seem unreasonable? Don't you see how millions and millions of young men, especially, that resonates with? Can't you see how that would resonate with them? And this is why Nick Fuentes is so powerful. And so what's Mark Levin's response? Get him out of the party. He's no good for the party. No, Mark Levin, you're no good for the party. You're the one that's been on the wrong side of everything. I'm not saying Nick Fuentes is doing it exactly right. I don't think he is. I think he needs to think more deeply about these causal connections and see, it's funny because somewhere in here he talks about how he studied libertarianism and Austrian economics. And by the way, a lot of people have, and not many people have come to the realization that the money is the source of the problem. I would say out of all the libertarians you meet, probably 2%, only 2% really feel like that is literally the linchpin and would argue for that. Most libertarians are, well, you got to remember, some big, large percentage of libertarians just want to smoke pot and do drugs or whatever. That's the problem with the Libertarian Party is you got the social libertarians that they're only interested in freedom to smoke pot or do whatever they want to do, kind of thing. And, they're not really interested in a larger political freedom discussion, which is kind of the problem with the Libertarian Party. But and maybe that's why Nick Fuentes got turned off by it. But anyway, I just it's obvious to me why Nick Fuentes is so popular. What he's talking about is resonating with people.
thought maybe I'll make money and maybe I won't, but I'm going to try it for a couple of years and I'll see how it goes.
So, but the sight picture in your head was enemy is conservative movement.
Yes.
Do you think that was a good choice?
Yes, absolutely.
Rather than like, but why not like Antifa or I don't know, Anti-Defamation League, or there are a lot of institutions on like George Soros. Like, why would it be their conservative establishment? Why do you think that was important?
Well, I kind of took a page from Trump's playbook, which is that you have to, in the country, the left was hegemonic over all the institutions. And you have this organized opposition to the left and the Democrats and all the left-wing controlled institutions. And the organized opposition comes from movement conservatism, the Republican Party, Fox News, the sort of constellation of conservative institutions. And I said, the problem is, whether you go Democrat or you go Republican, you're kind of just like getting the same thing. You're getting the establishment effectively. The opposition is basically controlled or moderated. It's not authentic opposition. It's not a true alternative. And so I said...
Now, Trump, he's probably going to talk about this, but Trump actually was, okay? Trump was never supposed to be the candidate, okay? Remember how many times they predicted that, oh, he's out now. Grab him by the pee. Oh, that's it. He's done. John McCain, that guy wasn't, in my mind, he's not a hero. Oh, he's out. He said John McCain's not a hero. He's gone. All these people were predicting that Donald Trump was on his way out all the time, the whole time. They were trying to drive him out. And the problem is, it's like this Nick Fuentes, the America First. People, look, you don't have to be a genius to look around and go, man, my life is not working. What is the problem here? And then you look around at your politicians and all they're doing is talking about Israel. We got to get behind Israel. Go look at the, I should have played it, but go look at the primary debate where Mamdani and Cuomo and these other guys are all running for mayor in New York. The person asking the question said, where would you like to travel to? Every single person on the stage, and there was like 9, said they wanted to go to Israel and visit Israel. And they got to Mamdani and he said, I'm going to stay in New York and work on problems for New Yorkers. I mean, doesn't that seem like the logical answer? Like, why would I run for mayor and then immediately go to Israel? So it's like Nick Fuentes says, this is controlled opposition, okay? These people are bought and paid for by, he would say the Jews, okay? But I would say people that are interested in the Zionist movement, the Zionist project. And yeah, they happen to be Jewish. They're also American, and they're also happen to be very wealthy. So does that make you anti-Semitic to notice that very wealthy Jewish Americans are buying politicians to control, America's foreign policy, even America's domestic policy? Look at that mayoral debate in New York. All those people said they wanted to go to Israel and visit Israel. Like, what? You're running for mayor of New York City. Why would you go to Israel? It just doesn't even make sense. But that happened. Okay. And so this is what he's talking about. He's like, people are looking at these politicians and going, why are you talking about Israel? Why aren't you talking about Detroit, where I live? I live outside of Houston, but I'm just motivating what voters might be saying is you should be talking about Chicago, not Israel. Our problems are in Chicago. Our problems are in Detroit. Our problems are in Houston or whatever. But this just is not happening. Okay. And so the question is, why is this not happening? And this is what Nick Fuentes is always pontificating about. And this is resonating with people.
We, and by we, I mean the true America First nationalists, we need to fight for the mantle of the opposition. And then leading the opposition, then we can take the fight to the left as the conservatives, as the Republicans, whatever. But first, you have to win that internal battle among the audience that the conservatives have. Because that's really the problem, is that they have usurped. The base is extremely conservative, extremely anti-left, but the Republican Party, like those that represent them, are not at all. A lot of them are atheists. A lot of them are gay. A lot of them are feminists. And so I said, like, we kind of need to rally, like Trump did, rally the base against the establishment, and then take the fight to the left as the true alternative. And if you can win that, then you win the country. That was kind of Trump's model.
What did you see as like the most important gatekeepers that needed to be overturned, pushed aside in order to do this?
It was the Zionist Jews, like Dave Rubin, like Ben Shapiro, like Dennis Prager. It was these the guys that were really controlling the media apparatus that seemed to me to be the biggest impediment.
Okay, so he says Zionist Jews, and these are Jewish people, but these are just Americans that are interested in this Zionist movement. That's really a better way to say it. Because there are plenty of Jews that really don't care anything about Israel. It's just the ones in the media and these very financially well-off ones, they're the ones that are trying to control narratives and direct money and resources and government power in the direction of the Zionist movement. And so, this is kind of an innocent answer, because he's really just talking about who are the gatekeepers. Who's keeping us collectively from having a discussion about how to make Americans' lives better, how to make America better for Americans. And he's just saying, Ben Shapiro is doing that. Dave Rubin is doing that. These are the guys keeping that conversation within the establishment. And I agree. He's right about that. And so that's why he went on the offensive. That's why he's attacking those people. All right, let's get to the next clip. I'm not going to be able to play these whole clips because there's too much here.
You're one of those people. One of the reasons I wanted to meet you is you're one of those people who is defined by clips.
Yes.
And I'm one of those people also.
Yes.
Right? So I get it. So I'm going to just shut up and you tell me what you actually believe.
Yeah. Well, and listen, and I appreciate you saying that, because that's just the reality of the media environment we're in. So I don't expect you to know all my views, but as far as the Jews are concerned, I think that, like I said, you cannot actually divorce Israel and the neocons and all of those things that you talk about from Jewishness, ethnicity, religion, identity. And let me give you like a perfect example. So you say on your show that we need to treat Israel like any other country. And I sort of understand that in principle, because Israel is another foreign country.
Yeah.
But Israel is unlike every other country in the sense that because the Jewish people are in a diaspora all over the world, there are significant numbers of Jews in Europe, but also in the United States. And because of their unique heritage and story, which is that they're a stateless people, they're unassimilable, they resist assimilation for thousands of years. And I think that's a good thing. And now they have this territory in Israel. There's a deep religious affection for the state. It's bound up in their identity, the story of the Exodus from Egypt, the promise of the land, all these things. So let's say in the United States, for example, somebody like a Sheldon Adelson, he's not Israeli. Is he an ideological neocon? Does he believe in the promise of democratic globalism? I don't think necessarily. His heart is in Israel. And it's because he is a proud Jewish person. And I guess what I'm saying is that if you are a Jewish person in America, you're sort of, and again, it's not because they're born, but it's sort of a rational self-interest politically to say, I'm a minority. I'm a religious ethnic minority. This is not really my home. My ancestral home is in Israel. There's like a natural affinity that Jews have for Israel. And I would say on top of that, for the international Jewish community. They're extremely organized, and many of them are critical of Israel or Israel's current government or the project of Israel. But I guess what they have in common, unlike, let's say, like Singapore, for example, is that they have this international community across borders, extremely organized. that is putting the interests of themselves before the interests of their home country. And there's no other country that has a similar arrangement like that. No other country has a strong identity like that, this religious blood and soil conviction, this history of being in the diaspora, stateless, wandering, persecuted, and in particular, the historic animosity between the Jewish people and the Europeans. They hate the Romans because the Romans destroyed the temple. That's why Eric Weinstein goes to the Arch of Titus and gives it the finger and takes a picture. We don't think like that as Americans and white people. We don't think about the Roman Empire in 2,000 years ago. They do. And so I guess that's really, and I don't think that's me saying the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. I don't think that's me being hateful. I don't think that's me being collectivist. I think that's understanding that identity politics, whether you love it or hate it, whatever you feel about it, it's a reality that we live in a world of Jews and Christians, of whites and blacks. These identities mean something to us and they mean things to each other, and we can't sort of wish them away. And it feels like white people and Christians are the only ones that do that.
There's no.
Okay. So what I want to do, I thought that was well said. I don't agree with it because again, we've talked about this before, but identity is very important. The way, and I'm not talking about political identity or race or anything. I'm talking about when you go look at a problem, when you analyze a problem, it's very important that you identify the root cause or the underlying cause, the foundational cause, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now, I still think what Nick Fuentes is talking about is a symptom. Okay. The root cause here, the thing that bothers him, and it might bother me about Nick Fuentes if he had power. Let's say, first of all, let me finish my thought. What's bothering Nick Fuentes is this group, this well-organized group, can go to government and seek some privilege. Well, that bothers me too. But I don't care that it's Jewish people. That's not the part that bothers me. If all the blacks got together and pulled all their resources and manipulated Congress to advantage themselves over whites and Jews and Asians, and then I'd be pointing that out. Not that black people are doing it, but that somebody is doing it as a group, okay? It's just, you're using the power of government, which has unlimited force, okay? Essentially unlimited. If you have a printing press and a huge standing army and police in every city and every municipality in the country, that is a major force, okay? That is something to be reckoned with, okay? And if you can wield that force to advantage yourself or your group, that's the problem in America. Okay? That's the problem. And it doesn't matter if Jews are doing it, or if blacks are doing it, or if white people are doing it, or if Mexicans are doing it. It doesn't matter what group of people are doing it, or if a single individual is doing it. If you are so powerful, if you're so rich and powerful, like an Elon Musk, let's just say Elon Musk, or George Soros. There's a lot of people pointing the finger at George Soros. George Soros is so rich and powerful that him by himself can influence government to act on his behalf with unlimited force. Okay? He's just one guy. He's Hungarian. Should we all be angry at Hungarians or Jewish Hungarians? So in my mind, this is the proper way to look at this. Now, the reason I'm playing Nick Fuentes is because I want people to see, as does Tucker, wanted people to see this too. This is not some unhinged, crazy person like a Hitler. Okay. This is not somebody, if you listen to the whole interview, you'll hear about his respect for life and liberty. This is not a violent person. Okay. He's not interested in using force. He's interested in persuading people. The challenge is, though, when you start getting into this race pool and you start talking about race and color and things like this just kind of turns people off. They kind of They worry about that. And so my advice to Nick Fuentes would be to identify what you really dislike is that this very powerful group, okay? No doubt this group is powerful. But if there was no government that would wield that power for them, so just think of it like this. The Jewish lobby, okay, gives money to government. Government kills people because the Jewish lobby wants them to. Okay? If the Jewish lobby didn't have a government to influence, do you see how that would be very difficult? They individually would have to go pick up guns or make bombs or whatever and do that. Okay? It's the government that's doing that. Okay? And they're influencing the government to do that. And unfortunately, our politicians are crooked enough and evil enough that they're happy to take the money and go do it. Okay? So again, it's not a left and a right thing. It's not a Democrat and a Republican thing. It's their evil people that have power, that have access to unlimited power and are willing to use it. And these powerful Jewish people are willing to pay them to use it. That's the problem. Okay? It's not really any of these other things. And, you know, if I was friends with Nick Fuentes, I would try to persuade him to take all this energy, all this very powerful energy that he has, and redirect it to the actual root cause, the actual linchpin of what he's talking about, instead of, you know, trying to run people into this blood and soil kind of thing. Because this is going to pull us back into the, you know, the 7th century or whatever. You know, this is not going to end well if we make it all about race and religion and things like that. Okay? Remember, America's a reciprocity-based society. I had lunch today with an Indian guy, okay? Really nice man. I've known this man for a number of years now. And you know what? He's a Hindu, and I'm a Christian. But you know what? We get along great. We even talk about Christian and Hindu stuff. He's not offended by it. He's not threatened by it. I'm not threatened by him. But if he had a cop sitting at the table with us, and he's over there whispering to the cop, hey, you know, I don't like what Seth just said. Can you take your billy club out and hit him in the head? How well do you think that would go over? You know, if you just kind of break it down into a simple example like that, then I could go, oh my God, you know, Hindus are evil. I could, you know, make it about Hindus or make it about Indian people or make it about brown people or whatever. But what's really happening there is he whispered in the cop's ear, and the cop decided to use force on me. And if I resist, then I get shot or I go to jail or whatever. See, so it's the force, it's the access to force that we really object to. It's not the fact that they're Jewish. It's not the fact that they're brown or black or whatever. It's the fact that they've captured this force and are using it against us. Or in this case, using it against Gazans, okay? So that Israel can do whatever it's trying to do over there in Israel. So anyway, I just think there needs to be a redirect. There needs to be a redirect of this energy and this thinking in the direction that it actually exists, okay? All right, let's jump in. I got one more clip of Tucker. We're going to play a little bit about it, play a little bit on it. This is from when, you know, there was an assassination attempt on Nick Fuentes, and he's going to talk a little bit about it here. Also, this is where he brings up Stalin and how he's a fan of Stalin. And people are just coming out of the woodwork talking about Tucker should have pushed back on that, and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, okay, so the guy likes strongman or whatever. You know, there's a lot of people. Donald Trump is a strongman. A lot of people like Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump hasn't killed 60 million people. I mean, Stalin was a ruthless ruler, okay? But maybe there was something, he doesn't go into it, so we don't know what it is he likes about Stalin. But this just made people's heads explode that he mentioned Stalin in a favorable light.
But you had a real assassination attempt, like an actual one, which got no publicity that I recall. What happened?
Yeah, well, you know, it was after the election last year, I put out this tweet and I said, your body, my choice on election night. And, I wasn't, look, I'm not going to apologize for it, but I thought it was like a weak joke. It's like a lame joke. It's kind of like the most obvious turn of phrase.
It's a college joke. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
So I had other good jokes that night, but that was like the one that caught on because I just think it captured the imagination of liberals who were like, it's over for us, which it kind of is, but in some ways. But so I put that out there. I didn't even vote for Trump, but I put that tweet out.
Who did you vote for?
I didn't vote at all. I just recused myself. But that's just what makes it ironic because I became in some ways emblematic of the election, even though I didn't participate. But so it got 100 million impressions on Twitter. And people were saying on the news that kids were saying it in school. It was on like the news that in middle schools and high schools, the boys were saying that to the girls, your body, my choice. So it became this thing where it's like, he's creating this toxic environment for women. The internet lost its mind, and people then started posting my address online because they were so unhappy with the tweet. And so on TikTok and on Twitter, a screenshot of my address, my phone number, all my personal information, it went viral. And when I say viral, awesome. I mean there were multiple tweets that got 20 million views with my whole readout, all my information.
Like your actual address, where you spend the night?
Yes, where I live, where I do my show, all of it.
Damn, did you know that?
Yeah, I started to see it. So the election Tuesday, obviously, it was like Thursday that my address starts blowing up. I was going to do a show Friday, and someone shows up to my house, some weird looking guy.
Where was the outrage? I mean, I never even heard about this. Like I said, I don't follow Nick Fuentes, and so I think I've heard Nick Fuentes being interviewed on Dave Smith's show. But I really don't know Nick Fuentes, don't know anything other than what we're learning here. And, but where were the reports on the news about this? I mean, if some prominent person on the left, somebody looks at them crossways on the street, we hear about how there's violent threats to the left. And we never heard anything about Nick Fuentes. This just went unreported. And this is a very serious deal. I mean, that he's talking about here. Let's finish the story, but it's very, somebody came to his house and tried to shoot him. I mean, it's crazy. And all these people, it's called doxing, when they publish your address online. This is dangerous. It's like swatting. Some people swat people. They call the police. I heard gunshots next door. You need to get over there quickly. And, the police show up and kick the door in and kill the dog and all this other stuff happens. And, this is very dangerous stuff that people do when they don't like somebody. It's crazy. You need to stop this stuff.
Shows up to my house and just walks through the yard, walks through the gangway into the backyard, and is just circling my house and then goes away. So we call the cops, me and my producer, and we said, maybe we shouldn't do a show tonight. And that weekend, we hired private security just for the weekend, like 200 people.
You didn't have security?
No, I don't have security. Well, I didn't then.
Of any kind?
I didn't have cameras or anything, even. I had nothing.
Okay.
I was raw dogging it. Yeah, which was not smart, maybe, but never had a problem like that.
I've always lived that way too.
Yeah. But so that weekend, we hired a security guard just to park his car outside the house and monitor things. Literally 200 people came.
To your house?
Yes. Not all at once, but one after the other. Driving by, yelling, walking by, throwing eggs. Multiple people threw eggs at my house, ordering pizzas, ordering DoorDash, whatever, walking through the gangway. It was like a war zone. Like this security guard was yelling at people all night, and it went on all weekend. And then it went on throughout the next week and the next weekend. And it was bad. I got out of my house. I went to a hotel for a week while this was happening, waited for it to blow over.
You do your show from the hotel?
No, I took a week off.
Wow. Did you announce any of this in public?
No, I had to keep it very...
Hello. My name is Adam Ferrari,
just to be clear,
Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy.
Just to be clear, this was
I look forward to you.
December
Why?
of last
I didn't
year,
want
so
to
almost
track
a year
more
ago.
of it.
Yeah.
Because if you say, oh, they're here, then people go, oh, no, we got to keep up the pressure or turn it up. And people at that time were talking about burning my house down. Like on TikTok, there were viral
That's
videos
terrible,
of people
man.
saying, we're going to burn his house down. And then they doxed my parents' address. People are showing up to my parents' house. It got really bad. And eventually it just blew over. About a month passed. And at that time, so it was like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was an admirer. But we don't need to go into that. I guess.
Let's okay. Let's get back. We'll circle back to that.
It was weird because the reason I mentioned that, it was almost.
So people are pissed because Tucker didn't push back on. You're a fan of Stalin? What are you, an imbecile or something? Well, remember, I mean, just for argument's sake, people go to government schools. There's a lot of people that think about things wrong. Okay. I'm not saying Nick Fuentes is right. I'm saying he is over the target. But he's going to miss the target because he's kind of focused on this whole race thing. But it's conceivable that he thought Stalin was he's a fan of Stalin for some reason. I don't know why. I guess we won't know why because Tucker didn't explore it. But that doesn't make Tucker a horrible person because some guy on his show says he's a fan of Stalin. I mean, it's just ridiculous. This is the kind of stuff Mark Levin and these guys are saying.
Because I woke up that day and I was like, oh, it's December 18th. And I was just like very acutely aware of like, today's like a strange day. This is the day that the attempt happened. And so nothing had been happening for weeks at this point. So elections like November 3rd, month and a half has passed. Nobody's coming to my house anymore, rarely. And I'm doing my show like normal. And I'm reaching the end of the show and I see out of the corner of my eye, I get an alert from my Ring doorbell camera that somebody's at the front door. And so I'm reading through my super chats. I'm going through live
You're
chat
on the
messages. Air. Yeah, I'm live. And, I'm working through the messages and I'm keeping an eye on it. And I see that this guy has a loaded gun. The guy's
standing. Laugh.
Yeah.
So you're live, and
yes.
You see that there's a guy with a gun outside your door.
Yes. He's got a motorcycle helmet and a backpack. He's got a gun drawn and he's knocking on the door yelling. And the thing is, I didn't want to tip him off that I knew he was there because I thought I don't want him to get the drop on me or something. I just didn't want to give him any information about, because I don't know if he's listening to my show. If I start freaking out or cancel the show, I don't know. Maybe
Nick Fuentes also is from Chicago, where you can't have a gun. You just, there's no way to protect yourself in that situation.
He knows more about my movements inside. So I keep the show going for like a minute and I wrap it up very quickly. I finish the show. My producer comes running in and I say, who is that? What's going on? And he goes, oh, I called the cops. They're here. The guy's gone. I said, okay, good. So I start getting changed out of my suit and I hear gunshots go off outside.
Damn.
Yeah. And I literally like jumped to the ground because I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. And I step outside for a minute after the dust kind of settles and there's like 10 cop cars all up and down the street and they have the whole block locked down. Police tape everywhere. There's like a dozen cops. Like I said, the whole block is shut down. The alley is shut down and they go, get back inside, get back inside. We have no idea what's going on. We have no idea what happened. And they wouldn't let me or my producer leave until the morning. That's how late they were there. And finally, at the end of the night, after all the cops left, I came out in the very early morning.
Did no one come and explain any of this to you?
No, nobody said anything. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Got back to writing
and finally,
tickets.
I go out in the morning and I asked the guy, oh, okay, what happened? He told me the story. And so it turns out that it's this young guy. He's 23 years old, white, nerd, short guy. He was at U of I, University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, about 2 hours south of where I live. He killed 3 people earlier in the day. He went to his roommate's house, college roommate's house, killed his roommate, killed the sister, the guy's mother, got in his car and drove directly to my house, parked outside my house, got out a .22 pistol and an automatic crossbow. Weird choice. And he knocked on the door which is where I saw him. He went around the house. He tried the back door, tried the front door.
Some people are just crazy.
And
man.
the cops pulled up. He took off running through the gangway, hopped the fence, ran into the neighbor's house. I guess he went into the neighbor's basement because the door was unlocked. He was hiding from the police. He shot 2 of their dogs, which is devastating. He runs back outside, and the cops see him. He shoots at the cops, shot him in the face, and he dies on the spot.
Yeah. So anyway, a real assassination attempt, not some fake thing that people like Nancy Pelosi are often touting, violence, political violence. That was actual political violence. But anyway, again, the central theme here is just, you got to identify the right problem. We can, and this is my frustration with the political process, is you just cannot direct, you cannot get people focused on the right thing. It's impossible. And, very few people have a huge audience like Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson to really try to pull out this type of foundational causality. And that's just the way it is, unfortunately. Maybe one day this will be a giant show. I don't know. Probably not, but it could be. And people will be criticizing me for what I'm talking about. But I think that force is really the problem. And to the extent you're willing to pay for that force, to influence that force, that is just an extension of the problem. And that's what these very powerful Jewish donors do. They have a lot of money. I mean, at the end of the day, they have a lot of money. They have more money than they need. So they take some of that money and they buy political force with it. That's essentially what they do. And that's what people are really upset about. When you get right down to it, that's what we're upset about. But notice that it's not a Republican or Democrat issue. Some of these people are Democrats. And now the Republicans are arguing on behalf of some Democrats. And that's how ridiculous this has gotten. And so this is how twisted up you can get in the political system when you're focused on the wrong thing. So I don't want to sound like I'm lecturing my audience, because, I think my audience is smart enough to understand this, but a lot of people, unfortunately, are listening to people that want to make it about Republicans, or they want to make it about Democrats, or they want to make it about the Jews or the blacks or the Asians or some other boogeyman out there. The bottom line is, political authority is force, or it can result in force. And the only way to really deal with that is to neutralize political authority. Well, how do you do that? You take away the money. You just make government so small that it doesn't have political authority. And that's the way you do it. And the way you do that is you move away from fiat money and get on some sort of hard money standard. That's how you do all that. And people will magically stop talking about the Jews. They'll stop talking about the blacks or the Asians, or the Asians are stealing our jobs, or the Mexicans are stealing our jobs, or all that stuff will go away. It'll just disappear from the public conversation. And we'll replace it with some other conflict, but it won't be, and more importantly, we won't get dragged back into a blood and soil type society. Can you imagine? Just think about that for a second. In America, getting dragged into race and religion, blood and soil, how messy that is. I mean, we don't have a nice uniform culture. We have a very diverse culture. And so if everybody just got on their team and started, killing other team members from other teams, because it's the blacks, it's the whites, it's the Jews, it's the this, it's the that, all of a sudden our reciprocity-based society would just devolve into, tribalism and violence. I mean, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. So it's vitally important that we recognize the true problem, and then we talk about the true problem and not some imaginary problem. And it doesn't help that people like Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, make up some imaginary, opposition. Like this is somehow, what Ben Shapiro is saying is true and Tucker's a liar. No, Tucker's not a liar. The people lying are the people that want you to believe that Tucker's a liar. Like people like Mark Levin. And what I always like to point out is, what did they say during COVID? That there was a chance there. COVID didn't have anything to do with left and right, Republican or Democrat, Jew or whites. Okay? What truth were they telling at that time? They were towing the narrative. They were towing the narrative line. Okay? And that's what they're doing now. And so don't be fooled by all this craziness. All right? All right, with that, I'm going to wrap up. Guys, come in and comment on the show, okay? Share the link. Come into the YouTube video. Some of you are still just listening, which is great. Continue to listen. I find that very convenient for myself. But go to Who Gets to Decide on YouTube and give me a thumbs up. Like the show, subscribe to the show, comment on it if you like. I read the comments. But do go to YouTube if you would and like and subscribe, because YouTube has really got a better algorithm for finding people, for finding like-minded people. And that's what we really need to do on the show. So if you would do that for me, I'd really appreciate it. All right. I am going to wrap up from here. Thanks, everybody. Peace. Good to see you. I'm out.